still not automatic, effortless. Thinking in English is automatic, effortless. It's very fast. The second problem is people don't think in English, they very different thing to think about English. When you think about English, it means you think about the grammar rules, right? You think about the pronunciation. So you're talking and you say something and then you think, oh, so as you're talking, you're thinking about your mistakes, or you're thinking about grammar rules, or you're trying to think of a new vocabulary word you used or learned before, but now you can't remember it. So you're thinking about the language, you're not thinking in English. When I say think in English, it means that everything's just happening. Your thoughts are in English, you're thinking in the language, and it's just coming out. It's coming out, right? And that's what I mean when I say effortless English. This is our goal, is that you think in English so it comes out effortlessly, fluently, without translation, not thinking about grammar rules, not thinking about anything, just thinking in English, the same as your own language, right? Same as your own language, right? The same as native speakers, right? When I speak English, I don't think about it. I don't think about verb tenses. I don't think about vocabulary lists. I don't think about the pronunciation at all. I just do it. It's just happening automatically because I'm thinking in English. So here's the question, as Jose asks. How do you do it? So I think we all understand that this is something we want to think in English, but how do you do it, right? Because if you don't think in English, then English feels always like a difficult struggle. And this can make you feel anxious. It means you can, all these problems that you have. So the problem is that you're not learning deeply enough. This is the problem for most people. Not enough deep learning, right? And this is connected to the idea of immersion, which a lot of people know. Immersion. Immersion means you are surrounded by the language. Immersion, the most common meaning of immersion, is to be underwater, right? It means if you are immersed in water, it means like you're under the water, right? So there's water everywhere around you. There's water above you. There's water under you, next to you, in front of you, behind you. You are immersed in the water. So that's what that word means originally. But we also use it in language. So this means that you are always, always, always surrounded by the language. This means English. That means everywhere you look, you see English. Every time you listen, English, 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 and only English. You are immersed in English. So this is possible if you move to an English-speaking country. But what if you don't? What if you live in a different country? How can you do this? It can be difficult. Even inside of an English-speaking country, it can still be difficult because in your own home, you might still be speaking your own language with your husband or wife. You might have a lot of friends and you speak your own language. And so actually, even if you move to America, you might still... This kind of immersion is that it can be too difficult. If you just go and just hang around native speakers and you're just listening to, let's say, Americans have conversations all the time, you might not understand. The vocabulary is too difficult. The sentences, the grammar is too difficult. Too many idioms, too much slang. You don't understand much. So yes, you have kind of immersion. You're hearing it all the time, but you're not understanding, so you're not actually learning and not actually improving. This is why just going to a country is not enough. If you're more of a low intermediate, then just going to the country will not help you. And if you're a beginner, it won't help you much at all. So immersion is good. You need immersion. This is what will help you think in English, right? This deep learning. But you don't need to go to the country. So let's talk about it. First, 2 ideas, 2 concepts, and then I'll give you the actual methods of exactly how to do it. So concept 1 is high frequency vocabulary. High frequency. So to think in English, there are thousands. You see many different numbers of words you need to know. How many words do you need to know to be fluent in English? And people give you very different numbers. You can go search online on the internet. You'll find a lot of different numbers, right? Maybe something very low like 2,000, or something super high like, it's actually kind of both, because you need a lot of what we call passive or receptive vocabulary. That means you hear a word and you basically know what it means. That's passive. But then you also need active vocabulary. This is the vocabulary you use when you speak. It's actually the vocabulary you use. And that number can be much, much smaller. To think in English, probably you are not focusing on the right vocabulary. You're probably trying to active vocabulary. Passive vocabulary is fun. You need a lot of it. But for active vocabulary, trying to learn and actually use when you speak too much vocabulary, it's overwhelming. And this is where you start thinking about English. You start thinking, oh, what was that word I learned? And now you're not thinking in English, your own language. And then you try to translate it. How do I translate that exactly into English? And now you're translating. Again, you're not thinking in English. This is a big problem, right? You're trying to use, when you speak, too much vocabulary, too complicated. And you're not actually thinking in the language. And this is not how children do it when they learn English, right? Like my kids, this is not how they do it, okay? And it's not how you did it as a kid when you learned your language. Frequency vocabulary. And this is where actually, the good news is you don't need a lot. Active vocabulary means you actually use it when you speak. Passive is you hear it, you know it, but maybe you can't use it. There's a lot of words, if you see them in a book, you know what they mean. But when you're speaking, you never will remember them and actually use them in a conversation, right? That's a lot of words, and that's okay. It's normal. In fact, it's not bad. It's a good thing. When you speak, what you need, and also with your listening, you need a lot of high-frequency vocabulary. You need to get a huge amount of repetition, which is our next point, of high-frequency vocabulary. High-frequency means the most common words. Point number 2, you must learn these common words and phrases very deeply. They must become automatic. That's how you will think in English. So a big problem people have is they know words. Like maybe you know that, I don't know, so you know this if you take an English test, you know it. Maybe when you speak and you're in a conversation and everything's happening quickly, maybe you forget and you say bide, or you say bye, or you have to stop and actually think for a second, whoa, and you have to remember that it's irregular, right? So then in the actual doing, right, the actual speaking, you're not thinking effortlessly. You're not using that word effortlessly. For example, maybe you're good with that word, but there's other words and phrases that are difficult for you. About it, you can find the right answer, but it's slow. It's not automatic. It's not effortless. You're not thinking in English, really. To think in English, you need a lot of repetition. You need a huge amount of repetition of these most common words and phrases, including the grammar, including the pronunciation. Like thousands of repetitions, not just 100. Effortless speaking, actually thinking in English. So when you're thinking, you're not thinking in your own language anymore. It's all in English. For that, you need a huge amount of repetition. I call this deep learning. Okay, so deep learning of what? High frequency vocabulary. The most common, simple vocabulary. You don't need, super advanced, difficult words for speaking. Not necessary. You can communicate even advanced ideas using simple words. And this is the best thing to do in the beginning. To really think in English. And then, of course, later you will learn more words that are more difficult, more advanced, less common, and you'll add them and you'll use those when you think in English too. And yes, of course, you'll get better. But don't try to... I think traditional ways of learning are terrible. Traditional ways of teaching English are terrible. One reason they're terrible is they're boring. So it's hard to do a lot of repetition. It's difficult to do a lot of vocabulary lesson. You might watch a vocabulary video 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. But then you're bored, you don't want to hear it again, right? They're just telling you the word and what it means. Maybe they give you an example sentence. And there's no entertainment, there's no emotion, it's not interesting at all. And you can't repeat that 1,000 times. You can't do it, it's just too boring. Right? Also, there's not enough repetition in those lessons. Usually they all, right? And then they go to the next word, and then the next word, and then the next word. There's not enough repetition. And it's done in a very boring way. When you're bored, you lose motivation. You don't want to do it anymore. So it becomes very difficult. That's normal. It's normal. We don't like to repeat things that are boring. Okay? So it's terrible. So this is why, you won't be surprised by my recommendation, that I recommend the mini stories. I think the mini stories, that's why they're kind of at the center of my method, Effortless English. Because, number one, they're fun. They're fun, and they're funny, and they're weird. They're entertaining. They're silly, usually. They're not serious. And because of this, them too, okay? I mean, anything, if you do it enough, you might get bored with it. But you can usually do these mini story lessons. Most students tell me, and I know for myself using them, like for Spanish, say, that I find them far more interesting. To listen to, for example, when I was learning Spanish, to listen to just a Spanish vocabulary lesson or grammar, a podcast or something, I could maybe listen to it 1 time. Even the 1 time was kind of boring, but I could do it. But to go back and listen to it again and then again, no way, it's boring. But when I was listening, go there. I was listening to Oscar's mini stories. I listened to his mini stories hundreds of times. Each one, hundreds of times. I can still remember the story of the penguins and surfing and escaping the zoo. I mean, all that. It's funny. It's crazy. For these the lessons interesting and useful, and there are stories. Learning a brains like and hundreds of drawing. So the repetition is actually very easy and entertaining. Not serious, especially story. Some of you may have a favorite, many times. Enjoy watching it again, right? The repetition's fine with the story that you enjoy. So that's why the mini story lessons, I believe, are the most important lessons. In every one of my courses, that's the most important. Method number 2, the point of view stories. So this is the next thing. Repetition is not enough. You need repetition, but in different situations. Okay, because this is how you really learn a new phrase, a new word, new grammar deeply. If you just hear it the same way every time, using the exact same sentence, for example, you can learn it, but it's not as good as if you hear that word in one sentence many times, then you hear it in a different situation with different grammar. Now you're getting a lot of repetition of that word or phrase, but also in many different ways. And then your brain makes more connections, and then you will really learn that word or phrase or grammar very, very deeply. So that context, lots of repetition, but also lots of different situations. And this is why we do them. For example, the point of, but then I change the time, the perspective, meaning I tell the story in the present, and then I change it to the past. I tell it again, but now it's in the past, so all the verbs change to past tense, right? And some other words change. And then I'll tell it in, talking about it, pretending it will happen in the future. Now all the verbs change again. But it's still the same root verb, right? But they're changing. So in this way, you will naturally learn the grammar, right? You naturally learn the grammar, not by, you just will get it by repeating, and getting the different versions, different context. In this way, you really will begin to think in English grammar. It's very different than knowing it. When you know English grammar, you take a test, yay, you pass the test. But then you start talking, and you make a lot of grammar mistakes. Or even worse than mistakes, is that you speak so slowly and unnaturally because you're worried about making a mistake. You're thinking always about all these rules and things, and then you can't understand you. If you use a wrong verb tense sometimes, it's not a big problem, right? People will still understand what you're talking about. But when you kind of and you're trying to be perfect all the time, and you're thinking about grammar rules, and your brain is translating, then your communication is terrible, and you speak so slowly, so unnatural. They're not patient with you, right? They become impatient. They don't want to talk to you so long, right? This is terrible. You don't want that. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. So it's important to also have these point of view lessons, and also other ways. This is the third method. Other ways to get the repetition. And you want to hear the new words and the new grammar, or the old words and the old grammar. You want to get repetition from different other areas as well. From a podcast, from a book you're reading. This is why also in my lessons there are main articles, I call them main articles, where I use the same vocabulary and grammar again. But it's a different situation in a different context. So you're repeating every lesson daily. Inside each lesson, for example, in each mini story, I ask a lot of questions. So you just listen to one mini story, you get a huge amount of repetition. Then you listen to the point of view stories. You're getting a huge amount of repetition again, plus it's a different situation. Then you listen to the totally different situation, different commentary, different text. And then again, finally, you get a commentary, and it's different again, but more repetition. So all these different situations, it's interesting information. It's not just a boring lesson. This is why it's so powerful. And then you can also do this yourself. Read books that are about a similar topic. Then you'll get even again and again. Use audiobooks, and you're going to hear them. This is another way to get different situations. Get the repetition from reading, but then change, and also get it from listening too. Right? So by doing all of this together and focusing especially on those more common, more simple, high material, not reading research articles, PhD level, okay, you're never going to get enough repetition that's easy and to really get the, the main, again, you only need, let's say, 2, 3, 4,000 words of English, and the most common, simple grammar, past, present. You need to be able to talk about the past, talk about the present, and talk about the future. Yes, there are other conjugations, verb tenses, and other grammar as well, but those are the main three for clear communication. You want to master this high frequency, most common English so that you think in English as you talk. You're thinking in English using the most common thing. This is how you do it. Simpler English immersion focused on highest frequency English immersion using interesting, fun, silly stories, entertainment, or interesting information, interesting topics. This is how you do it. Do all of this, combine this together, and you do it every day, and you will start thinking in English. You will. Not in 1 week. It's going to take several months doing the beginning, think in English with simple vocabulary. That's great. Then your fluency, you're speaking very naturally, very quickly. You're using simple language. It doesn't matter. You can use simple language and still talk about advanced, complicated ideas. You sometimes have to use a lot of the simple words and put them together well. But you can still talk about a lot of things. And then gradually, of course, your vocabulary will grow more and more and more, and you become more sophisticated, right? More advanced. And you can, that's why, children, when they're 5 years old, they're not talking about economics, right? And using a lot of, complicated business English words, or they're not doing that, right? They're using the most common, frequent, simple English. If they're American or British. But they do it with complete mastery, right? Effortless, because they're thinking in English completely. And then as they get older, of course, the vocabulary grows and their thinking gets more complex, right? For you, that will happen faster because you're already an adult. You need to focus on high frequency vocabulary. You need a huge amount of repetition, deep learning. And how do you do that? You use many story lessons because they're entertaining, they're motivating, they're fun. You can get a lot of repetition with them. And a lot of important vocabulary and grammar. You use point of view stories, which will help you especially with grammar. And you also use other kinds of lessons, main lessons, commentaries, and yourself. Just go read a lot, listen to podcasts, listen to anything and everything you can, but focus on especially more simple levels of English. Read simpler books. Read books, full books, but a little bit easier. You don't need to read the translation of War and Peace. Okay? Not yet. Okay? You'll get there. Take your time. If you want more information, there's some more, there's some good research about all of this. It's not just my ideas. There's actually some research. There's the ncbi.nlm.nih.gov. It's a long link. It's British Health Service, I believe, in education. There's eric.ed.gov. That's a research website where there's a lot of, that one's American, ERIC. So eric.ed.gov. You can go there and you can search for research articles if you're interested in the research. There's sciencedirect.com. which has done great research on the role of repetition and language learning. tandfonline.com, they've done research about how powerful mini stories are, about how powerful point of view stories are for load. Has some good research on there about motivation and why it's so important for language learning, and I agree completely. And then finally, there's a website called eJournals. This is a European one. eJournals. Of effortless English courses in improving language learning. So that's a specific research article someone did. I believe they were Polish. About my course specifically. And I don't even know who the person is. I don't even know them. So this is independent. Someone independently did a research project on my lessons specifically and why they're powerful and how effective they are. So follow up and do your own questions. I can take a few comments and questions.
Плюшку мы покупали уже в феврале.
Thinking in English.
Не помню.
Questions or about any topic. I'll look here at the comments.
На Новый год родители
Typing while I was talking.
в декабре, по-моему, тоже не было. Ну, прям такого, чтобы лежало тут недельный, сильный.
Да, в феврале.
Вот.
Я посмотрел в розетке.
Не было ж ничего, было ж тепло.
Мы
Мы ходили на каток, и я в этой ходила, в своей весенней курточке.
You're right, it is technically wrong. Make a grammar mistake.
Пересмотреть условия вот этого
So what? Who cares? Nobody cares.
возвращения
Nobody cares in the real
средств
world.
за спорт.
You still communicate
Смотрю, у меня
well.
потрачено уже частично.
Mistake doesn't matter, okay? You know, look, native speakers make mistakes all the time.
Не.
Ты же говоришь, обувь эту поищи.
Обувь спортивная. Но там написано фитнес.
Ну, зимние
For example, in, let's say, American English, it's very normal to use, let's say, incorrect grammar. To use phrases that are technically incorrect, meaning an English teacher or a grammar expert would say, that's not correct, right? Like, say, for example,
Шипы или спортивная
really
теннисная обувь написано.
Right? Or, you know, he runs really good. Using a better,
Это надо что-то
more
придумать на
common,
$160.
right? He runs really good. He draws, right? So it would be better to say, you know, he runs very well. He draws very well.
Нужен тебе фитнес-шар.
Okay, so yes, this is, you know, if you want to be specific about the grammar, yes. But still, you'll hear many native speakers.
Он был у Лены
Say things
Ильины.
like, he
На
draws
нем
good.
закачивать ребенка, типа, вообще супер.
Но без него он потом не будет засыпать.
Everybody understands you're not a native speaker.
Да, но потом
Don't
я
worry
когда
about that kind of
увидела,
mistake.
мы были в гостях у
Worry about
бабушки,
Yes, later, as you
и
get more
до
repetition,
меня не было еще, ну, у меня София еще не
will
было,
improve, okay? And you'll
Полина
eventually correct that mistake.
маленькая
It's
была.
okay, right?
И когда
And if
Полина
you're-
начала капризничать,
Trying to do, you know, if you're doing a job interview,
Олег,
you need
пора
to
укачивать.
use a very
Шаршишь
professional
дома,
level of
и будут же
English.
они с собой тащить
Then, of
мяч
course, you
от
want to say he
к
draws well.
бабушке, хоть и недалеко, но...
But
Ну да, это...
И потом я вижу вот это вот в спальню, там вот под окном стоит Олег с Полиной,
and
вот
again,
так вот. Потому что по-другому она не укачивается. Бедный Олег, потом Полина уснула, а Олег
maybe you
выходит,
use correct
вот
English
вещь классная. Но потом отучали они очень долго, очень тяжело.
well, and you know, he's also a really well. Oh no, not a well runner. No, he's a good runner. You'd be constantly correcting yourself and stopping and starting and thinking, and as the sentence changes slightly, is it an adverb? Is it an adjective? And so, yeah, maybe your grammar test would be a higher score, but your communication stinks.
Вот, правильно.
Listening to you is difficult. Too slow and unnatural, always stopping, always correcting yourself. That's bad communication, and actually nobody would listen to
Какая-то...
that.
Не, ты уже
It's kind
видишь
of
в
difficult and
новой
stressful to
почте.
listen to someone speak like that.
Да,
И что пишут?
Much easier
Ладно, вы
to talk to
пробудите
someone.
17-11.
Maybe they're
Она
not
время.
perfect, but
До 18.
they're very fluent.
Ну, типа
words
завтра
come out
в
very
течение
easily
рабочего
and
дня.
naturally, right? So, yeah, of course, I know you want to have better grammar. That's a good goal, but fluency first. Thinking in English first, with simple English first. Then you build and build. Jose Angela says, many times I walk down the street and do simulated dialogues in my mind. I create phrases about what I saw when walking. This is a great way to get more repetition, especially active vocabulary, where, yeah, maybe you can't always talk to someone and have a conversation, but you can just, this is great, Jose, like you just walk around and you're just describing things, and you're doing it in your mind. So you are thinking in English. You're training yourself. You're practicing describing things in your mind. That's a great idea. I like it.
Да.
Anna Grigoreva says, I have a decent amount of passive vocabulary, but as for my active,
Да, гиря,
it's a
спандеры,
real problem for me.
скакалки, беговая дорожка, велотренажер, коврик для йоги, силовая
Exactly,
скамья,
this is where then you want to start speaking.
всякие абонементы, но абонементы нам ни к чему, тем более никто нам
You want to especially
не выпишет
focus in
никакую
on those
помощь
mini stories where
на мое имя.
I think the mini stories and the point of view stories are the very best for creating active
Фитнес-трекеры,
spoken English, where you really think in English and use it effortlessly.
ну, всякие умные часы,
Those are the two lessons that will help. The main
умные кольца, там, всякое
my
такое.
business English course, some other ones too. They will help you with your passive vocabulary, with your understanding, but for your active speaking,
Спортивное
mini stories.
оборудование, лыжи, сноуборды, велосипеды, ракетки, мячи и сопутствующее оборудование, лыжи, сноуборды, каяки и т.д. будут подлежать возмещению один раз в 3 года. Не входит спа, витамины, еда, остеопатия, акупунктура, одежда для кемпинга, фурнитура, кулинарные классы, уроки музыки, починка, фитнес-оборудование для дома, вейпинг и видеоигры. Если бы видеоигры входили, я думаю, ни у кого проблем бы не было вообще. Что бы выбрать?
Mini stories. Pronunciation course might also help you with that. Nina says, how can I receive your ebook? It's only 14 pages. It should be 200 pages. I subscribed to your free email course, but I didn't receive it. I'll put the link down here. It's effortless English. I can actually change it on my screen. Edit this. Edit it. That's my website. Just go to that page. Yeah, so it's on the screen if you're watching on video. So it's effortlessenglish.com, effortlessenglishclub.com / that line, and 7 rules altogether. Then that's where you can get my full ebook for free. I'm just giving it away for free now. The whole ebook. Paperback you still have to buy. It costs me money to print it. But ebook is free. So you go to that website, you can sign up for my email course, also free. That's download. It's a PDF. So you should be able to read it on your phone. You have to adjust it to make it a little bigger. You know, the words might be really small on your phone if you have a small phone. So you're gonna need a way to make it bigger. So you should be able to read it very easily on a computer or a tablet, like an iPad or something. So yeah, go to that, and you can get the ebook for free. And it's not 14 pages; it's 200 something pages. That is 23 chapters. It's a full thing. For free. /7 rules. Yeah, Uzmanov Dilmurad says, I don't answer the many story questions. Instead, I retell the story. That's also fine, right? You know, it's flexible. You can do what works for you. So, the story. And I understand. I've done both of those things too.
Что происходит?
And it says, the deeper you dive in English, the better you understand the beauty of language. For example, the verb get. We Russians joke about this. To learn English, you only need one verb, get. It's a very useful word, that one. That's true. It can be used in...
Оно кривит так.
Olga Sergeyevna says, Sergeyevna. How are your kids doing? They're doing very well. Waiting for me to come play right now. 7 rules of effortless English. Lots of little rocket emojis. Awesome. Kuzmanov says, AJ, please make a show about the benefits of journaling. I have found out many successful people do journaling. I do. Yeah, I should do that. That's great. There's lots of ways to do it. I can't remember. But I'll do a show about it. OD asks, how many American, USA, states have you traveled to? That's a good question. I've never counted it. I don't know. I've been probably pretty much all the states on the East Coast up to Massachusetts. I've never been to Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. So all up and down. So from Florida all the way up the East Coast to Boston, let's say, Massachusetts. I've been through all those states, and most of the southern states I've been to.
Я
Southeast.
снова, наверное, туплю.
There. And a lot of the Midwest, Rocky Mountain, and the Southwest. Like I've never been to Arizona or New Mexico.
Понял.
I've been to Colorado. Never been to Montana, Wyoming, Missouri, even Nebraska, Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota. It's like the center part of the country I haven't been to. And there's a lot of beautiful things there. So sometime in the future, maybe I'll take the kids and the family will all go. Oh yeah, Hussein Nazari. This is good advice about the speaking and active. I used your oldest podcast for shadowing. I did it even before talking to anybody else on my YouTube channel or my podcast, and I've talked about it in a few different shows about the technique of shadowing. This can help you think in English. This can help you better with your active vocabulary, like actually speaking more quickly and more easily. And in fact, my pronunciation course is a good point. Thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah, so Jose Andres Liriano Aquino says, what about, and this is where you, with this problem specifically, focus on getting much more deep learning repetition of common, simple English. You may be trying to imagine in your head, you're probably trying to translate from one, that could be one problem, and you're trying to, so, when you think in your own language, or a master of your own language, but then you try to do English, if you're trying to translate, the problem is your language, you're a master, you have 50,000 words or more, but English, right, you're not a master yet, and you maybe know 6,000 words or 8,000 words, and you can't even use all of those well. So this is a big problem with translating, because then it becomes very hard, because you can't translate everything exactly because you don't know enough English, right? So This is where you want to focus on the stuff that feels easy. Stuff that feels easy. Videos, audios, lessons, everything that feels fairly easy to you, but you get more repetition so it becomes automatic. And the same when you use shadowing or other speaking techniques, retelling, talking to yourself even, use simple, common, easy English, what you probably feels like easy English. Use that first. Let the easy English become super automatic, right? So you're thinking in easy English, like a kid would, like a child would. Then sometimes you have to step back, right? It's hard because, like in this example, is very common, Jose's example, is that your understanding might be actually quite high. Maybe, especially reading, like often reading can be very high. Like this is my situation in Spanish. I can read Spanish at a pretty good level. Then my listening is less than that, right? Because of the speed and other issues. So very normal. So that you probably have the same thing. Don't try to speak at the same level that you understand, right? Or that you read, even worse, right? You're not going to speak English at the same level that you can read English. Your reading is probably much, much higher. That's common, all right? So that's fine, and don't worry about it. To improve your speaking, especially the thinking in English, especially the fluency. Cool. Edna Bertini says, AJ, I like your course so much. I participate in the VIP community. Yeah, so great that you joined the VIP program. That's the best program. That's the one that has my most successful students, my most motivated students. So I have many different courses. Go to effortlessenglishclub.com/7rules and you can get started there. Get the free ebook there. Actually, I think at the bottom of that page, I have some information about the VIP program also. So yeah, that's a good place to start. Loyalty RD says, I am from the Dominican Republic. I can understand you 100%. What do you think is my English level? Thanks for your podcast. I've improved a lot. I've listened to almost 400 of your shows. Yeah, that's awesome. So, yeah, you clearly, you can understand me 100% easily. You know, you clearly, well, at least a higher intermediate level. I think for your example, it's time to start, you know, maybe doing even more speaking. Try to talk to people, talk to yourself, retell stories, do shadowing. You're ready. You're ready. And that's a really great result. Good for you. So can you show off your Japanese? My Japanese is not very impressive. So sorry. Thank you for the donation of 10. I'm not sure what a SAR is. That's SAR. I'm not sure which currency that is, but you know, my Japanese is everyday, basic, common. So you know, and this is, in fact, this is something I've been pushing myself to do in Japanese. Just speak and don't worry about mistakes. Just make mistakes. Don't worry about trying to be perfect because it will paralyze you. Trying to be perfect all the time, so I'll be like, oh, okay, I want to say like, you know, I used to live in Kyoto. Kyoto ni sunde. And you get all pretty like trying to just say, you know, is it ni or is it de? Oh, I forgot. Just say Kyoto ni sundemashita. Is that perfect? I don't even know. It doesn't matter, but will people understand what I mean? Yes, it means I lived English. Where, like, do I say I lived at? Do I say I lived in? Do I say I lived on? It can get confusing. And then you start thinking about it. Like, let's say Hawaii. I'll give you a good example in English, because this is confusing. Because with an island, it can be different. You can say Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii is correct. I lived on Hawaii is correct, but it has a little wrong grammatically, technically. However, if you in a conversation, if you use any of those, people will know what you mean. Okay, the communication will be clear. You can say, "I lived at Hawaii for 10 years." Will it be confusing? No, everyone will still understand you. So Yeah, eventually maybe you want to correct that mistake, but if you're in the middle of a conversation, talking to someone, you don't want to be thinking about that all the time, because then it kills your talking. The whole conversation gets super slow and difficult, right? Just say whatever pops in your head. I lived at Hawaii. Okay, yeah, it was a little bit wrong. If you say I lived on Hawaii, what that means is if you say I lived on in English, in this case, it actually means you lived on. Call that the Big Island because it's confusing if you use the same word. But technically, the Big Island's name is Hawaii. And then their other islands are Oahu, which is where Honolulu is, and there's Maui and Hawaii. Those are kind of the main ones where it lived in Hawaii. It gets very confusing, right? It's even hard for me to explain why. Why don't we say that? I don't know if I can't think of a rational reason right now, but it's just how we do it. Okay? And if you get too focused on these little things like this, then you can actually kill your thinking in English. Now you're thinking about English, and you get so focused on all the little in English anymore. You're analyzing it, which is different. All right, I'll go 2 more because we're almost been an hour, and it's time for me to go play with kids. Maria Rubina says, "Hi, my teacher. I bought your book. I've been reading and listening at the same time for free. Soon, we gotta do some set it up so you guys can do it for free. But I'm giving the ebook for free now on my website on the screen, and we'll put the audiobook link. You will need to give your email for the audiobook because there's a lot of files to download, so you're gonna have to log in and download all the audios. But it's a really great thing is you like what Maria's doing is you can read the book. Like I recommend just do 1 chapter. So I did my own audiobook. If you like my voice, that'll be good news. And then you do that, and again, I like what Maria's doing. Repeat it a lot. Repeat it a lot. And again, I did this a lot in Spanish, for example, where I would actually my book is translated in Spanish, so I would read my own book in Spanish, and I would listen to my friend Oscar did the audiobook for that, and so I'd listen to Oscar Hoffman's book with his book The Linguist. So he has a Spanish version of it, so I would listen to the Spanish version and read the Spanish version. It's a way to get more repetition and deep learning again. Because both those books, my book and Steve's book, are written at a fairly simple level of language, so it's not too difficult, at least in Spanish. Now, in Japanese, I can't understand his book in Japanese. And Omar18, thank you for the donation of SAR. What is SAR? I'm too curious now. SAR currency. Oh, the Saudi Riyal. There you go. Great. Saudi Riyal. Thank you very much for donating. Okay, we've got 3 minutes until I gotta go. Mohammed says, I am in the US for 5 years. Still having issues following what my friends and colleagues say. Any suggestions? Okay, do you have an advanced course? Yes, VIP program is my most advanced course, so I recommend join VIP program. But number 2, in your situation, I think you want to start do a search on my YouTube channel, just AJ Hogue YouTube, learning movies or movie technique. Effortless English, movie technique, AJ Hogue. It's on my channel. I can't remember the link though. Okay, but watch that video and then use it. So movies will help you because movies, slang, all these things that it's hard to get from books and courses. So I would say at your level, in your situation, you're in America right now, working with native speakers, that using movies would be very helpful for you. So if you get my free audiobook, then you can check out that one as well. But mainly you want to, I'd say, get VIP and use the movie technique yourself. Just pick a movie you like. Jose says, when you have doubt about in or on, I live in Hawaii. People won't even know. Did you say in? Did you say on? Right? I mean, even native speakers sometimes have to think about it. Especially with islands, for some reason, it's weird because you could say I lived on California, right? Or I lived on San Francisco, even. We would never say that. But you will say I lived on Oahu, right? So we say on with islands. I don't know why, but we do, right? So you would say I lived in San Francisco. I lived in California. But you would say I lived on Oahu, the island. But you would say I lived in Honolulu, the city. Right? And you would never say at for that phrase. So for any of those phrases, you would not say at. So. I feel your pain, it's confusing. Second Mirror of Life, good to see you as always. I am life, but never seen an English teacher such as you. You're one of the best. That's very kind. Thank you so much. Thank you. So my audiobook, I think maybe on effortlessenglish.com. So no club, just effortlessenglish.com. I think you can still get my audiobook there. The website has some, we're going to redesign that. Yeah, more or less. It has a little bit of issues, but you can get, it says 2 free speaking 3 chapters in my book. Oh, this is where people are getting just 2 chapters, only 14 pages. I see. But you can get the audiobook here. It says The Effortless English. Let me just put it on my screen. You can see it. This is effortlessenglish.com. This is my book website. Available as an audiobook download. For free. Oh, nice. But you have to give your email here and click the yellow button, and then you'll get a login. You'll get a password. You get a password and a link, and then you can get I think there are 23 audios, one for each chapter for my book for free. I think it's still working. Let me know, okay? Because we're going to do this better. We're going to put it on the main site, effortlessenglishclub.com. It'll be a little more simple for you to get the audiobook. But I think this is still working. So try that. Try effortlessenglish.com. A little complicated right now because it's in different places. We're going to get that fixed. And you'll be able to get everything. The audiobook, the email course, and the ebook. All on one page for everything free. I'll give you that link once we make it. All right, we're going to get that set up. We're setting it up now, and we'll get all that stuff. So just to summarize, our main topic was think in English. Think in English, and we talked about